Welcome to Tellumin Insights, where we reveal the hidden forces that shape the way you live and show you how to use them to create real transformation and supercharge your health, mindset, and daily life. Here are your hosts, Emma Greenwood and Nathan Sinclair.
Believe it or not, what follows is an AI-generated conversation, one designed not to mimic humanity, but to illuminate it.
Welcome to Tellumin Insights. Okay, let's just jump straight in. Imagine this. A room, right here on Earth, a physical space where time itself, like the actual ticking clock, supposedly slowed down, or even sped up sometimes.
Right, relative to everywhere else.
Exactly. And look, this isn't science fiction, not a movie plot. This is the incredible claim behind decades of alleged experiments run by this really dedicated, maybe unconventional Russian engineer.
And people went inside these things.
Yes, people stepped inside and reported just bizarre physical feelings, strange visions, even get this out-of-body experiences. It sounds absolutely nuts, doesn't it?
It really does. It pushes against, well, everything we think we know about time and reality.
Totally. So today we're doing a deep dive into the, let's say, fascinating and definitely controversial work of Dr. Vadim Chernov and his team. They claim they built and tested devices designed specifically to alter how time passes, but only in a confined space.
Yeah, our mission here is to really unpack these extraordinary claims. We'll look at who Chernov actually was, explore the pretty unique design of his apparatus.
Those spheres, right?
Those spheres, exactly. We'll delve into the reported results from the experiments, and that includes some, frankly, quite unsettling tests on biological subjects, even humans.
And then we have to ask, where does this fit? Or, maybe more accurately, not fit with mainstream science?
Right. Critically examine that.
So yeah, get ready. This one might genuinely make you question everything you thought you knew about time. Okay, so first things first, the man himself. Who was Dr. Vadim Chernov?
Well, the sources identify him as Vadim Alexandrovich Chernov. He was a Russian engineer, a researcher, definitely someone with a lifelong interest in mysteries, anomalous phenomena. Lived 1965 to 2017.
So he had some formal background, not just some guy tinkering in a garage.
Oh, no, far from it. He had a solid engineering education. He trained as an aeronautical engineer at the Moscow Aviation Institute, which is, a serious institution.
Aeronautical engineering, okay.
And importantly, he founded this organization called Kosmopoisk. It was dedicated to investigating unusual events, UFOs, that sort of thing. He also wrote several books on these topics.
An aeronautical engineer building time machines. That's quite a leap from designing planes.
It really is, and it kind of shows where his real passion was, doesn't it? His fascination with manipulating time apparently started pretty early.
Oh, really?
Back in his university days, reportedly. Doing these sort of unofficial research projects, his whole career, even with Kosmopoisk, seems driven by this desire to push physics boundaries, especially when it came to time. Even if his ideas were, well, way outside the mainstream.
Okay. Before we get lost in the details of the machine, let's clarify something crucial. When we say time machine, everyone thinks H.G. Wells or, Back to the Future.
Right. Flux capacitors and DeLorean cars.
Exactly. But that's not what Chernov was trying to do, was it?
No, absolutely not. That's a really critical distinction to make up front. His goal wasn't time travel going the past or the future.
So what was the goal then?
It was all about altering the rate of time, how fast or slow time flowed, but only inside a specific contained chamber.
Oh, okay. So more like having a localized dimmer switch for the universe's clock, just for that one little spot.
That's a great analogy. Precisely. Could you speed it up a bit or slow it down compared to the normal time ticking away right outside the device? That was the entire focus.
All right, that makes more sense, even if it's still a wild idea. So how did they even try to build something like that? What did this apparatus actually look like?
Well, the descriptions paint a pretty specific picture. The core of the device used nested electromagnetic spheres. They had a technical name for them. Electromagnetic working surfaces, or EWS.
Nested spheres. Like Russian nesting dolls, but made of electromagnets.
Kind of, yeah. That's a good way to visualize it. The construction involved layering, typically 3 to 5 concentric spheres made of electromagnets, and they were wired up in some fairly complex series and parallel configuration.
How big are we talking? Shoebox size, room size?
More like medium-sized. The outer sphere usually had a maximum diameter around 1 meter, so about 3 feet across. But the innermost sphere, the working area, was much smaller, around 115 millimeters in diameter.
So what, like 4.5 inches? That's tiny.
Yeah, tiny. The sources say it was just big enough to put instruments inside, and later small animals or biological samples.
And what was the theory? How were these electromagnetic nesting dolls supposed to, bend time?
Well, the proposed mechanism was to create converging spherical electromagnetic waves inside this nested structure.
Okay, converging waves, but how does that affect time?
This is where it gets really unconventional. The theoretical link they proposed involved something called ether compression.
Ether. Wait, isn't that the stuff scientists were talking about in like the 1800s? The medium light was supposed to travel through? I thought Einstein got rid of the ether.
You're absolutely right. Mainstream physics largely abandoned the concept of a luminiferous ether over a century ago. But Chernov's work seems heavily influenced by another Russian researcher, Nikolai Kozyrev.
Kozyrev. I've heard that name in relation to some pretty fringe ideas.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Kozyrev had these highly unconventional theories about time having physical properties, and he talked about things like torsion fields. Chernov seems to have incorporated these ideas, suggesting that by manipulating the density of this hypothetical ether using these EM fields, they could actually influence the flow of time itself.
Right, so they're building these very specific spherical devices based on theories that are, let's be clear, definitely not standard physics.
Correct. Drawing heavily on Kozyrev's ideas about time, ether, torsion fields, things well outside the accepted models.
So when did they actually start testing these things? When did the experiments begin?
The information suggests they started quite early, actually. Reportedly around 1987 or 1988.
Wow, back in the Soviet era.
Yeah, and the work continued. By 2003, the sources mentioned Chernov was collaborating with another researcher, Alexander Frolov, on more, let's say, formalized testing efforts. So these experiments seem to have spanned quite a few years, possibly decades.
Measuring a change in the rate of time? I mean, how on earth do you even do that? It sounds incredibly difficult.
It is. That's the fundamental challenge, right?
Yeah.
How do you measure something if the measuring stick itself, time, is changing?
Exactly.
Their approach was, well, pretty direct. They put multiple different kinds of timekeeping devices inside the apparatus while it was running, simultaneously.
Multiple clocks? Like what kind? Your standard Timex?
Probably a bit more sophisticated than that.
Yeah.
They reportedly used a whole range. Electronic clocks, quartz clocks, even old-school mechanical clocks.
Okay, different mechanisms.
Right. And they also used what were described as nuclear timekeeping devices.
Nuclear clocks. Those are hyper accurate, aren't they? Like atomic clocks.
Extremely precise, yes. Although the specific type isn't always detailed. Additionally, they apparently used specially designed duplicated quartz generators, basically comparing the frequency of one inside the field to an identical one outside. And even fiber optic line diodes were mentioned as time markers.
Okay, so using a bunch of different methods makes sense. I guess the thinking was, if only your digital clock goes weird, maybe it's just the electromagnetism messing with the electronics.
Exactly.
But if the mechanical clock and the quartz clock and the nuclear device all show the same discrepancy,
then maybe, just maybe, you're seeing something more fundamental happening to time itself inside that sphere. That was the rationale. Try to rule out device-specific errors or simple environmental interference.
all right, this is the moment. What did they claim happened? What were the results? Did the clocks inside run differently?
The claims are pretty astonishing if you accept them. They reported a general change in what they termed the density of time. That's Kozyrev's terminology again, measuring about a share of seconds earthly hour.
A share of seconds. That's still a bit woolly. Did they get more specific? Any hard numbers?
Yes, some sources do give more concrete figures. One report mentions an experiment where they observed time slowing down deceleration by 4 minutes over an 8-hour run.
4 minutes over 8 hours. Wait, that's half a minute per hour, right? 30 seconds slower every single hour.
That's the calculation, yeah. Which, if true, is a massive deviation. Think about relativistic time dilation. You need near light speed or immense gravity for effects anywhere near that.
Absolutely huge. Any other figures?
Another source described it differently, claiming a result where for every 3,600 seconds outside of the system, only 3,560 seconds would pass inside.
Okay, 3,600 seconds is an hour, 3,560. So that's 40 seconds slower per hour in that claimed test.
Right. So different experiments might have yielded different magnitudes, but both 30 and 40 seconds per hour are just extraordinary claims.
Were there others?
Yeah, there were mentions of deceleration up to 1.5 seconds per hour in some tests as well. So some variability.
And this dimmer switch, could they only slow time down, or did they claim to speed it up too?
They did claim acceleration was possible too, yes.
Okay.
The sources indicate they believe they achieved time speeding up in some experiments. But the details seem fuzzier. There's less available information, fewer specific numbers cited for the acceleration results compared to the deceleration ones. It seems slowing time down was the main focus, or maybe the effect they could measure more consistently, according to them.
Okay, measuring clocks is one thing, still extraordinary, but sort of abstract. But then they went further, didn't they? The outline mentions biological testing. That sounds like a massive, potentially dangerous step.
It absolutely was. And the initial results reported were, well, deeply concerning. After testing with inanimate objects, they allegedly moved on to putting living subjects inside the active sphere.
Starting small, I hope, like insects or something.
Yes. Reports indicate they began with insects and then moved to laboratory mice.
Okay, mice. What happened to the mice?
This is where it gets quite disturbing. The early experiments with mice reportedly had a shockingly high mortality rate.
How high?
One specific claim states that 25 out of 31 mice died after being subjected to the field inside the sphere.
25.
Yeah.
Out of 31. That's over 80%. That's horrifying. Whatever was going on in there wasn't just subtly altering time. It was lethal.
It strongly suggests powerful, biologically disruptive forces were at play. Now, to be fair, later reports claimed more successful runs. They mentioned 2-hour tests with animals where they supposedly survived.
Including a dog.
Yes, there was a reported test involving a dog. It apparently showed signs of fear while inside, but they claimed it suffered no lasting physical harm afterwards.
Going from an 80% death rate in mice to a merely scared dog, that feels like a huge jump. It makes you wonder about the consistency or maybe the reporting of these results.
It definitely raises questions.
And seriously, after seeing those initial mouse results, did they really put humans inside this device?
According to the available reports, yes. Astonishingly, human experiments allegedly followed the animal testing phase.
Unbelievable. Who was the first person? Do we know?
The first named human subject was reportedly a man named Vadim Chernov. This was said to have happened on August 26, 2001.
And what did they claim happened to him?
The claim for his trial was a time deceleration of 3% of planetary time during a half-hour trial.
3% over 30 minutes. Okay, half an hour is 1,800 seconds. 3% of that is 54 seconds. So they claimed his personal time slowed down by almost a full minute in just half an hour.
That's the reported claim. An incredibly significant effect on a human, if true. And the documentation suggests he wasn't the last.
Dozens more.
Apparently, dozens of other volunteers participated after that initial test.
So what did these people feel? What did they report experiencing inside this time-altering sphere? The descriptions sound pretty intense.
They really are. Participants described a whole range of physical and psychological sensations. Things like an accelerated pulse rate, feeling dizzy or giddy.
Okay, maybe understandable with strong EM fields.
Perhaps, but then it gets weirder. Skin irritation or itching was commonly reported.
Pitching. That's odd.
Very odd. And even more disturbing, some people reported feeling physical sensations like their body was twisting, or numbness in their arms and legs.
Body twisting. That sounds genuinely nightmarish, like something out of a horror film.
It's a very unsettling description, and maybe the most extreme claim of all. At least one participant reportedly had an out-of-body experience while inside the machine.
Wow. Just wow. Did they see anything strange? Visual effects?
Yes, that was reported too. Some participants described seeing things like a starry sky, even though they were inside a closed sphere. Others mentioned luminous vortices, or just seeing colorful spots or flashes.
And it wasn't just the person inside who felt things, right? Didn't observers outside sometimes have issues?
That's correct. The reports indicate that people just standing near the apparatus while it was operating sometimes experience physical symptoms too, most commonly headaches.
Okay, so summing up. We've got claims of clocks running slow, lethal effects on mice, profound and bizarre physical and mental experiences for human participants, strange visuals, even effects on observers nearby, all supposedly linked to bending time. Let's revisit the theory. How did they explain all this?
As we touched on, it all comes back to Nikolai Kozyrev's highly unconventional ideas. The theoretical framework was built on his concepts of torsion fields, and this notion that time isn't just a coordinate, but an active physical thing that can interact with matter and energy.
Right, torsion fields. That's not a term you find in standard physics textbooks. What was Kozyrev's idea there?
In his view, processes that increase entropy, think burning something or evaporation, were supposed to generate these torsion fields, which he linked to emitting time or affecting its flow. Conversely, things that decrease entropy, like freezing water, might absorb time.
So, like, physical processes could directly influence time's flow.
That was his proposal, yes. He called it the Kozyrev effect, this idea of a two-way street where physical changes affect time and changes in time affect physical stuff. It's a radical departure from Einstein's relativity, where time dilation is linked purely to gravity and velocity.
And the nested sphere device with its converging EM waves and the whole ether compression idea, that was their attempt to physically create the conditions Kozyrev described, to generate these torsion fields or manipulate time density.
That seems to be exactly it. The apparatus was built to try and physically manifest these very non-mainstream theoretical ideas and directly influence the passage of time according to that model.
Okay, given just how far out these concepts are, torsion fields, physical time density, manipulating ether with electromagnets, what does the mainstream scientific community make of Chernobrov's work?
Well, this is where the reality check comes in. Chernobrov's work is pretty universally considered outside the bounds of established mainstream physics.
No ambiguity there.
Not really. The core concepts he relied on, Kozyrev's theories, torsion fields, ether, in this context, they simply aren't part of the standard model of physics that's been built on relativity and quantum mechanics and verified by countless experiments.
So why the firm rejection? What are the main sticking points for scientists?
There are several big ones. First, as we just said, the whole theoretical basis is non-standard. There's no accepted physics that predicts you can alter time's rate this way, using electromagnetism under normal Earth conditions. Second, even if you look past the theory, the experimental reports themselves often lack the kind of rigorous detail needed. Information on controls, blinding, shielding, precise measurement techniques. All the stuff needed to rule out alternative explanations.
Right. Like, how certain were they that the powerful electromagnetic fields weren't just, directly heating the clocks or interfering with their electronics in a totally conventional way?
Exactly. That's a huge potential confounding factor. And third, and this is absolutely critical for any scientific claim, there's no mention in the sources of independent verification. No other labs outside of Chernobrov's group seem to have successfully replicated these dramatic results. Replication is the cornerstone of science. And finally, think about those biological effects. The mouse deaths, the human sensations, they just don't line up with what we understand about time dilation from relativity. Relativity's time effects are usually subtle unless you're near a black hole or traveling near light speed. They don't typically involve, itching or feelings of bodily twisting.
So when you hear about all those intense effects, the lethal results for mice, the skin irritation, the twisting feelings, the observer headaches, maybe even the strange lights or reported ozone smells mentioned elsewhere, could there be a much simpler, more conventional explanation?
That's definitely the dominant skeptical viewpoint. All those dramatic biological and environmental effects sound very consistent with exposure to powerful, perhaps fluctuating or complex electromagnetic fields.
Which the device was explicitly designed to generate.
Precisely. It's highly plausible from a standard physics perspective that these known EM effects could explain all the observations from clock interference to physiological reactions in living beings without needing to invoke anything as exotic as actual time manipulation.
Okay, so Vadim Chernov passed away in 2017. He spent decades on this, building these complex devices, running these apparently intense experiments, documenting extraordinary claims. Yet his work remains firmly on the fringes. What's the legacy here?
Well, his work definitely persists in the realm of alternative science, fringe physics. It clearly captures the imagination, intriguing people interested in challenging conventional boundaries, in mysteries, in those Kozyrev-type ideas.
It really highlights the contrast, doesn't it? Mainstream physics says time dilation comes from speed and gravity based on tons of evidence. Chernobov proposed this completely different path via EM fields and these older, discarded, or unproven concepts like ether and torsion fields.
It does. And, regardless of whether his theories were right or his results were real-time manipulation, you have to acknowledge the sheer dedication involved.
Yeah, decades of effort.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Decades spent pursuing these deeply unconventional ideas, building the hardware, running tests, documenting it all. That level of persistence on such a radical path is, well, it's a remarkable part of the story in itself. Whatever you make of the science.
So we've gone through this deep dive into the truly incredible, almost unbelievable claims of Dr. Vadim Chernov. This machine, supposedly designed not for zipping through centuries, but just for tweaking the rate of time right here, right now.
Yeah, and the experiments with humans reporting such bizarre, frankly unsettling effects. all based on theories that just fundamentally clash with accepted physics.
The big question hangs there, doesn't it? Did his team somehow, against all odds, stumble onto a genuine phenomenon, a way to manipulate time's flow using electromagnetism?
Or were all those intense effects, the clock readings, the biological reactions, the strange sensations, simply the misunderstood result of powerful but ultimately conventional electromagnetic forces playing out within a framework of unconventional beliefs?
It makes you wonder, though. Even if this wasn't it, if manipulating time's rate even slightly was possible somehow here on Earth, what else might be true about how the universe works that we just haven't grasped yet? Could our experience of time be, I don't know, more fluid, more malleable, more local than we usually think? It's definitely something to mull over.
Indeed it is.
This has been a deep dive with Tillyman Insights. If you found this journey into the weird world of time manipulation as fascinating as we did, definitely hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss our next exploration.